Todd, I'd like to ask you about this, and then I have a Minnesota question for you. On the Epstein release today, it was recently made public that Ghislaine Maxwell claims more than 24 men signed secret agreements with the federal government not to be prosecuted. What is your reaction to that, and what does that mean for her case?
I read an article that described, I wasn't aware that it was actual men that she's claiming. I thought it was accomplices, which I'm not sure if that's a reference to some of the financial institutions or other individuals that
25.
So yes, I don't have a reaction to her filing. I can tell you that we reviewed, as I just described, every single piece of paper that we have associated with these investigations, Mr. Epstein and Ms. Maxwell, and to the extent that such arrangements exist, I'm not aware of them.
3 million pages. That's how much the government just released tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Millions of emails, logs, documents, and yet almost no new arrests. So what's really going on? And why do old interviews from Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson suddenly feel a lot more relevant right now? When those files dropped, the internet did what it always does. Screenshots everywhere, names trending, people zooming in on flight logs like they're decoding a treasure map. Everyone asking the same thing, who's going down next? But here's the strange part. Long before this document dump, long before Epstein became a symbol for elite corruption, 2 Hollywood A-listers were already saying something was deeply wrong with the industry itself. Not about one man, not about one case. About the culture. Mark Wahlberg didn't hold a press conference. He didn't call anyone out by name. He just left. Mel Gibson didn't leave. He tried to warn people. And if you care about what's really happening behind the headlines, hit subscribe right now, because we're going deeper than surface-level trends.
My mid-20s,
Right.
the first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be. Because a whole place can't be like, you know, Weird Town, you know, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them and they tell you don't go into the house on the hill. And it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you were exactly on track, that some of your worst nightmares were real.
So instead of chasing redacted names today, let's step back and ask the bigger question. What were they actually seeing? And why does it matter now? Because here's something most people don't understand. A document release is not the same thing as an indictment. 3 million pages sounds explosive. It sounds like justice is about to rain down. But legally, that's not how it works. Just because someone's name appears in a contact book, flight log, or email doesn't automatically mean they committed a crime. Federal prosecutors need admissible evidence, witness credibility, corroboration, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Not speculation, not association. Not, they were on a plane once. Legal experts have explained this for years. Big file dumps often include redacted material, duplicate records, references that mean nothing, even innocent contacts. And that's why you can have millions of pages and still 0 new arrests. That gap between public expectation and legal reality, that's where distrust grows. And that's where the real conversation begins. Because Epstein didn't operate in isolation, he operated inside elite circles. Finance, politics.
I put on like 30 pounds. We did use some prosthetic enhancements on the face and stuff. They said, what happened to me and all this stuff. You know, I was bald. And I had the belly. Instead of waiting for people to come to me with something great, I would just kind of go and try to figure it out on my own. And that's why, you know, even with this now, you know, financing the film, owning the film, you have complete creative control, and I get to kind of showcase my ability.
Media, entertainment. The frustration people feel isn't just about one man. It's about how someone like him could move through powerful rooms for decades without being stopped. That's a system question, and that's exactly the word Mel Gibson has been circling for years. Long before Epstein became a headline, Gibson described Hollywood as something deeply unsettling. He talked about walking into rooms and feeling like something wasn't right, like there were were conversations happening behind doors you weren't allowed to open. He used metaphors about a strange town where everyone goes quiet when a stranger walks in. Now, you don't have to agree with every controversial thing Gibson has ever said to recognize the pattern in his statements. He wasn't pointing at one individual, he was talking about a culture, a system. He once said that some of his worst suspicions about the industry turned out to be real. And that feeling, that sense that there are power structures most people never see, is what keeps resurfacing whenever scandals explode. Harvey Weinstein, Sean Diddy Combs' ongoing legal troubles, Epstein, different names, similar themes, power, access, protection, and what often shocks the public isn't just the crime itself.
It seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Oh yeah, no, there was.
Which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it. It seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it, and I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're gonna get people going, because
Of course.
it's big subject matter, and it's like And my contention is, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, and I believe that, I actually am, I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, so I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
It's how long it was allowed to continue. Gibson faced enormous backlash in his career for many reasons, some of them self-inflicted. But one consistent thread in interviews was his belief that Hollywood doesn't like being challenged from within. He self-funded projects when studios wouldn't back them. He spoke openly about resistance to certain topics. Whether that resistance was about religion, politics, or power dynamics depends on who you ask. But the pattern he described was clear. If you don't align with the dominant culture, you feel it. Now let's pivot to Mark Wahlberg. Completely different personality, completely different approach. He didn't describe Hollywood as some shadowy town. He didn't make grand metaphors. He made a decision. In 2022, he packed up his family and moved to Nevada. When asked why, he said he wanted a better environment for his kids.
In my mid-20s, right, the first time I really came over here. I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on, because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand. Right. And I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be.
Do not deny my faith. That's an even bigger sin. It's not popular in my industry, but I cannot deny my faith.
Especially the gifts that have been bestowed upon me and the blessings have been for a reason. It's not to kind of go off and do another 5 Transformers. This was part of the calling, right?
It's a blessing, it really is, especially after COVID. I mean, I had a huge disconnect. I hadn't been to church for a year, and I was really kind of lapsing and struggling with lots of things.
I left school at an early age. I quit school at 13. Ended up getting into a lot of trouble, being incarcerated, tried as an adult at 16, 17.
You were a coke addict at sort of 13, 14. You got into gang stuff.
No, not
all
at
right,
all.
outside Boston. And you were arrested and spent time in jail for some violent. Seems to be some discrepancy there.
He talked about faith. He talked about wanting to build projects that reflect his values. He said openly that faith isn't exactly popular in his industry. That's not an accusation. That's a cultural observation. Hollywood is largely secular. Publicly religious celebrities often get mocked or sidelined. Wahlberg didn't go to war over it. He just built something different. He financed faith-based films himself when studios passed. He created more control over his work. And here's why that matters in this conversation. When 2 major actors, from 2 totally different personalities and generations, both signal discomfort with the same industry culture, people start connecting dots. Not illegal dots, cultural dots. Because this isn't about saying this person did this crime, that's for courts. This is about asking why the public keeps feeling like there's more beneath the surface in elite spaces. Epstein's story amplified that feeling. He socialized with billionaires, academics, politicians, royalty. Photographs exist, flights happened, donations were made, and when he was finally arrested in 2019, many people assumed a domino effect would follow. Instead, he died in jail, officially ruled a suicide. His associate Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted, but the tidal wave of accountability people expected, it never really came. So when millions of pages drop years later and still no wave of arrests follows, people start wondering if the problem was bigger than one man all along.
One of the most disturbing problems in our world today is human trafficking, and particularly the trafficking of children. Now, the first step in eradicating this crime is awareness. Go see Sound of Freedom.
That's the emotional center of this story, not conspiracy, not secret codes, but a loss of trust. Sociologists have studied institutional trust for decades. Surveys from organizations like Pew Research show declining trust in media, government, and large institutions over the last 20 years. Scandals accelerate that decline. Each time a powerful figure is exposed after decades of silence, it reinforces the idea that elite systems protect their own. Whether that's fully accurate or partially perception, perception shapes reality. And that's where Gibson's old interviews and Wahlberg's quiet exit suddenly feel symbolic. They represent two responses to the same discomfort. One tried to speak, one chose to step away. Neither claimed to have proof of a global network, but both implied that Hollywood isn't just movies and red carpets. It's power, money, gatekeeping, and cultural pressure. The Epstein files reignited that conversation because they forced the public.
This right here is The Sound of Freedom, a new movie which exposes the sexual trafficking of children. And also, it's a movie that's actively being hidden from the American public. Because as crazy as it sounds, despite the fact that this movie is, for one, based on true real-world events, and also despite the fact that it exposes the very real reality that millions of children across the world find themselves in, well, there are elite forces in both Hollywood as well as the media which have actively been working for the past 5 years to suppress this movie.
To confront how proximity to power works. Just being photographed with someone doesn't make you guilty, but it does reveal how tightly woven elite circles can be. And when misconduct happens inside those circles, accountability becomes complicated. Lawyers get involved, deals get made. Evidence must meet legal thresholds. It's slower and less dramatic than the public wants. So here we are, 3 million pages, countless online threads, and still the same core tension. People want clarity. They want justice that feels visible. They want the idea that no one is too powerful to face consequences. That's the real reason the question keeps coming back. Not who's next, in a revenge sense, but is the system capable of correcting itself? Gibson's warnings and Wahlberg's departure don't answer that. They simply reflect that even insiders can feel uneasy about how power operates. And maybe that's the takeaway. It's easy to focus on individual villains. It's harder to examine structures. Epstein was one man who exploited access. But access requires a network. Networks require culture. Culture requires norms that allow things to slide. Changing that isn't about one arrest. It's about transparency, investigative journalism, independent courts, and public pressure. That's slower, less cinematic, but more real. So instead of asking which celebrity is secretly in trouble, maybe the smarter question is whether institutions are willing to be transparent when powerful people are involved. Because if trust keeps eroding, every future scandal will hit harder, and every document release will feel like another test. Mark Wahlberg left Hollywood to build something aligned with his values. Mel Gibson spoke about discomfort with the culture. The Epstein saga forced the world to confront how elite access can be abused. Those threads intersect in one place: accountability. And that's the part we're all still waiting to see play out. If you want to dig deeper into how power networks actually function behind the scenes, watch the next video on your screen.